I want to start by apologizing for last year's video, My Favorite Things Fall 2018 Halloween edition. I never could have anticipated the effects that video would have on people. It was, to put it simply, too horrifying for the human mind to withstand, and I'm so sorry. In particular, I want to apologize for the inclusion of the fictional character Mega Eyepatch Wolf. He's not real and he can't hurt you. He will not be returning this year, and neither will anything horror related. See, today is just going to be a normal time for normal people, with nothing frightening or scary at all. We're all together, just going to have a nice, normal time. Wait, what?
Hatsune Miku is good. Pro wrestling is also good. What if we were to put the two together? Michi M's Serpham On the Ring is a 4-minute music video showing us an alternate reality where failed pop star Hatsune Miku leaves her parasocial destiny behind, instead teaming with fellow Vocaloid Rin to form the pro wrestling tag team Cutie Angels. The illustrations for this video were done by well-known Vocaloid artist Tsukasa Ryugu, who definitely has a gift for reinterpreting the characters of Vocaloid in all manner of different styles, as she's done beautifully here, transforming Miku and her fellow Vocaloids into some legitimately awesome looking wrestlers with animation that's minimal but still flows with snap and life. And look, I'm not gonna say that this video isn't weirdly specific to my interests, but I think it also captures the underlying appeal of Miku, a deeply malleable virtual pop star that can be molded into any role and immersed in any reality, leading to an endless stream of strange and stunning fan creations that have long eclipsed Miku's original identity as a mascot for a piece of audio software, Serpham On the Ring being a shining example of this. I don't know that many people care about anything as much as Nerrel cares about video games. The heart of Nerrel's channel comes from his in-depth knowledge of games as well as the technology and techniques that create them, an insight he uses to draw out these super fascinating critiques, often focusing on the very tiny parts of games. Just listen to how succinctly he cuts to the core problem of the Secret of Mana remake just by examining its background textures.
This is a good example of what's wrong with the remake. The original architecture is carefully detailed and shaded. There are keystones, rounded turrets, and a different layer of bricks for the trim. The shadows aren't just darkened, but shifted to a bluish-purple hue, which was part of the style of the game in its sequel. It all gives the castle a surreal appearance, like it's frozen in time in some other world. The problem with the remake isn't how faithful it is, but the care put into it. There are just a few blocky polygons with a brick texture slapped on. There's substantially less attention to detail, which is something you can see across the game.
This is the kind of tactile approach Neral brings to his videos, tapping and testing every tiny part of a game and drawing meaning from that insight. Like explaining how the many small changes of the Majora's Mask remake chipped away at the soul of the N64 original. Neral even creating his own HD texture packs for the original with detailed tutorials on how you can do the same. And seeing it all explained like this gave me a much deeper appreciation, not just for modding, but the construction of games in general. And if any of this sounds sterile, it isn't. Nerrel's videos are punctuated with this dry, surreal sense of humor that I just adore. I'd recommend any of his video essays to start with, but here's my challenge for you. If you hate motion controls, as many do, go watch Nerrel's video on the subject, and if he manages to change your mind even a little, then give Nerrel the follow he deserves.
When my dad was alive, he protected us all the time. He never raised a hand against me and my sisters. He never touched us. He never did any of that. He was the most kindest man. He's my hero.
I guess like you live your whole life trying to achieve certain goals, or you make relationships with certain people, and it all just gets lost to the void eventually.
I had really long hair up until like 6 months ago, and when I went into high school, I said, they're gonna be really mean to me. There, the kids were just ruthless. Like everywhere I went, I heard people saying like, are you a boy or a girl? And they'd call me other things that I don't want to say.
If you want a weird and fascinating internet hole to fall down, I'd recommend VR Chat, or more specifically, the YouTuber Syrmor's coverage of it. Syrmor's channel is made up of his exploration of the VR world and his encounters with the people he meets there. And what's so interesting about these videos is just how intimate and personal a lot of these interactions get. Now, I'm not arguing that there isn't something inherently hilarious about watching Jace from Dragon Ball Z explain his relationship woes to Winnie the Pooh, but what really strikes me about these videos is how when people are given anonymity and immersed in a virtual world, their walls come down and we get these weird little snapshots of their lives. From a crow girl talking about her childhood in foster care, to a Kermit the Frog recounting his school days being bullied, to a terminally ill man living out his final days in virtual reality. There's a touching sense of intimacy to these videos that make them really captivating. And while Syrmor is definitely really good at getting people to open up and share their experiences, these videos also make me wonder about the future of virtual reality and its potential to create empathy between people who have never met, and what that might mean if the technology was ever to become truly mainstream. Links for everything I talk about in the description below.
She's into superstition.
I haven't seen Promar, okay? I live on a tiny island surrounded by water where anime is illegal, and we don't always get the same cinema releases, but that's okay because I have watched... Kengan Ashura is a new Netflix original series where a collection of bizarre, hyper-powered martial artists all compete in the Kengan Annihilation Tournament. Each fighter sponsored by one of several giant mega corporations who choose to solve their business disputes through the art of bare-fisted murder, and sure, that's a reason for a fighting tournament. The manga was written by Yaboko Sandorvich, who incidentally also wrote How Heavy Are the Dumbbells You Lift, which is definitely not a series I watch and enjoy. And from the outset, I can see Kengan Ashura being a tough sell for people, especially fans of the manga. The coarse, brutal character work of Darumon replaced with the clumsy 3D models of the anime. But despite this, I actually had a blast with Kengan Ashura. While the character models are clumsy, the action is well directed, taking advantage of the wild dynamic camera moves that become possible in 3D, giving the fights a velocity and impact, and even incorporating these really cool mixed media sequences, which flesh out the backstories of each individual fighter. And while the story is severely cut down, it does mean that each episode is honed into a brutally satisfying 22-minute showdown. And that's really why you come to Kengan Ashura. The fights, the characters, the story, it's all joyously insane in a way I just adored. And granted, battle anime is probably my favourite form of media on the planet, and this is just a big dumb one of those. But one with enough energy and heart that it had me grinning like an idiot the entire time. So, for a while now, I have struggled to get into Gundam, something I attempted to put right earlier this year when I checked out the original Mobile Suit Gundam TV series. And while I enjoyed the characters and story, the basic art style and limited animation was a major stumbling block for me. Which is why I'm so glad I found the Gundam Origins manga. To put it simply, this is one of the most beautiful manga I have ever seen. It was drawn in 2001 and ran for 10 years, retelling the story of the original Mobile Suit Gundam, but now through some of the most stunning sequential storytelling I've ever experienced. From the imposing sense of weight and power the mobile suits are drawn with, to the playful yet delicate emotion of its human characters, every part of this manga feels like the work of a master, and that's because it is. Yoshikazu Yasuhiko was a character designer on the original Gundam in 1979, meaning he's been part of the series for 50 years. 5 decades of experience that's visible in every pen stroke and panel layout. I mean, just look at this one image of a spaceship floating against a collection of watercolored clouds. It is so stunningly beautiful, I'm not even sure I know how to describe it. And it's images like this that make up the story, the result being that the Gundam universe comes alive in a way that is so beautiful and appealing. I think I can finally start to feel myself becoming a fan. And so whether you're curious about Gundam or just want to see what the work of a master mangaka looks like, I highly recommend checking this out. Berserk with Vikings is not really how I describe Vinland Saga. This is a series not done any service by a quick explanation or a single line summary. What it is a story that reveals itself slowly and carefully, one set in 11th century Europe during the King of Denmark's invasion of England, with a focus on how that large-scale conflict sends destructive ripples throughout Europe, tearing apart the lives of the common people. It's pretty grim, but it's also fantastically written, with nuanced, multifaceted characters, each of whom struggle to cling to their own creeds and beliefs in a world that is erupting in war around them. The battle scenes conveyed with a cold brutality that reminds you that humanity used to solve its problems by sending thousands of men into a field and having them all stab each other at once. And if that's an uncomfortable thought, it should be, but it's also what happened, and in many ways what is still happening. Vinland Saga using its historical setting to highlight both the large and small scale atrocities of war, showing us these events through the eyes of a small child and how they gradually mold him into a hardened killer, as he and the other characters trapped in this nightmare of medieval war dream of one day escaping it all and sailing to the land of Vinland, where they can live in peace. Comparisons to Berserk are inevitable, but I think if anything, that's just a testament to how strong the storytelling of Vinland Saga is, making for what may well be my favorite anime of the year. And if putting it up there with series like Kaguya and Demon Slayer sounds like high praise, it really is.
Black cats and voodoo dolls.
Friends, let us lament the loss of one of gaming's great genres, the scrolling beat-em-up. Once the reigning king of arcades and home consoles, these titles have grown faint, faded, and forgotten, and now, in 2019, are never to be seen again. Oh, wait, except River City Girls. That came out this year. The highest praise I can give River City Girls is that if this were an anime, I would watch it. And I say that because while the combat is crunchy and satisfying and the visuals are clearly gorgeous, the thing that really got me about this game was its world and characters. The location of River City feels packed with life and personality, from the beautifully illustrated shopkeepers to the boss characters, each of whom have their own lavishly animated intro, to even just the random NPCs hanging out in its background. Every corner of River City's pastel world pops with a vibrant energy that can be felt in everything from its synth-pop inspired soundtrack to its stylishly presented story sequences. A story which sees our two super charming idiot protagonists, Kyoko and Misako, rampage their way through the streets of River City, fighting to rescue their kidnapped boyfriends. And look, I was always going to be into a game about two gorgeously animated pixel girls beating the shit out of an entire city, but when everything is this tight and well executed, what you get is a kinetic, stylish, free-roaming action game whose world is just a blast to hang out in and explore, resulting in a testament to what made scrolling beat-em-ups great, and I hope an indication of their future. I wasn't really sure what to think when developer Triband sent me a review code for What the Golf. Golf being the worst sport ever created. A startling waste of time that I hold an infinite amount of disdain for, a disdain that burned deep within me as I teed up my first few holes until this happened. Huh. From here, What the Golf became this bizarre journey of subverted expectations, gradually tweaking and twisting the game of golf in these really surreal, hilarious ways, meaning that when you charge up your shot, you're never quite sure what's going to happen when you let go, and yeah, it's great, slowly devolving its gameplay to the point that what you're doing doesn't even resemble golf anymore, thank God. But I think what's really amazing about this game is how it creates its comedy purely through its gameplay mechanics, which is something that only games can do, but few do. So hats off to Triband for making one of the funniest and most creative titles of the year.
I think we can all agree that that was a far more wholesome effort than last year. And it just goes to show you that just because it's Halloween doesn't mean that things need to get spooky. Now, before we finish up here, there is one more thing I want to talk about, and it is fireworks safety. Did you know as many as 11,000 firework-related injuries were reported last year in America? Oh God, he's here! Turn off the video! Turn off the video!
Okay friends, same deal as last year. We have 7 pieces of horror, and we're going to start with horror for babies and gradually work our way down to some proper pants-shitting terror. Enjoy. Boy oh boy, let's talk about House. House is this super weird Japanese horror movie made in 1977 and directed by Nobuhiko Obayase, who developed the idea for the film with his pre-teen daughter because, according to him, adults are chained down by conventional logic while children can come up with things that cannot be explained. And boy oh boy is that ethos present in every second of this movie, as 7 Japanese high school girls spend a night in a demonic house that eats people. And there's just this frantic energy to every part of it, from the awkward yet compelling performances of its never acted before cast, to the bizarre but oddly beautiful staging and lighting, to just some of the straight up strangest editing I have ever seen in a movie. Contrary to my previous paragraph, you probably don't want to show this to an actual baby, as there's some pretty out there visual horror, one scene in particular involving a girl being devoured by a piano. But it's that weird bouncy energy that keeps the film from ever getting too frightening. So even if you're a horror lightweight, this is the perfect Halloween movie to watch with some buddies and enjoy. Hey, remember Furbies? They were this super weird toy made by Tiger Electronics in 1998, and I wonder if there's like a fan community or one of those— oh god, oh no, why do people do these things? So, yeah, there's an entire community online dedicated to customizing Furbies and transforming them into the worst things I have ever seen. And while I do appreciate the craft and creativity that's gone into them, my god, these things are nightmares and I feel unsafe. And if you would like to also feel unsafe, I'll link some blogs in the description below. World of Horror describes itself as a 1-bit horror game, and it is goddamn fantastic. Developed solely by Polish dentist Paweł Kozminski, it's an old-school horror RPG set in the seaside town of 1980s Japan, where people are vanishing, strange creatures are appearing, and the odd carcass of an eldritch god is seen floating in the sky, where you, one of 2 playable characters, must investigate the town, traveling to its haunted locations and unraveling its mysteries, where you'll battle horrific creatures and make difficult decisions such as, would you follow this lady into a deserted biology lab? I wouldn't recommend recommend it. In a game that is equally creepy and gorgeous, the artwork tinged with the influences of Junji Ito, but all created in MS Paint, creating this really distinctive lo-fi atmosphere of dread. World of Horror is currently in development with a demo available on itch.io, which you can download for free, but if you can, maybe kick in a buck or two. It's a great project and I'd love to see it come to fruition as the unique and striking piece of horror it has the potential to be.
Bobby, I want you to meet my colleague, Dr. Hamilton.
And I'd like you to get the fuck out of here.
Oh, it's all
Get
right.
out of here! Jeff, get out of my room! Get out of here, bitch! Get out of here!
This is a scene from the 1989 movie Gnaw, Food of the Gods 2, and while it is ridiculous, I also think there's something genuinely quite frightening about it. I think horror has this strange ability to traverse the line between the absurd and the terrifying, and there's moments of Food of the Gods 2 that walks that line beautifully. For the most part, the film is a schlocky goofball monster movie covered in a thick layer of 80s cheese, but there's also moments of shocking and disturbing imagery that feel like it hits on something deeper. The aforementioned scene being a great example of this, from the startling appearance of the giant, furious child to the adult's hopeless inability to do anything about the situation. To me, it actually captures a genuine fear of parenthood, that someday we will foster children who will completely take over our lives, and there's nothing we'll be able to do about it. I would also say that this scene is actually only the second most disturbing moment of this movie, but I cannot show the first here. So if you want to explore the weird space between the ludicrous and the horrific for yourself, go track down a copy of Food of the Gods 2. Pulse is a 2001 Japanese movie that is so shockingly, weirdly ahead of its time, becoming more relevant and chilling as the years go on. The film takes place in late 90s Japan, an era when the internet was becoming widely available for the first time, Pulse framing the new online frontier as a portal to a nightmarish reality where people become psychologically trapped, slowly morphing into ghostly versions of their former selves. Good thing that never happened to us, right guys? Pulse is not a movie that tries to scare you with immediate understandable threat. In fact, in a lot of ways, it's a film more about the fear of loneliness and isolation, communicating that fear through haunting, empty camera shots and eerie, otherworldly sound design. Only occasionally dipping headlong into full-blown horror, but when it does, Pulse is absolutely terrifying. The hallway scene in particular being one of the most visually nerve-shredding pieces I've experienced in a very, very long time, and a high point to one of the most distinct and chilling horror movies of the last 20 years. I can remember sitting in a screening of Midsommar and watching as about 40 minutes in, several people got up and just walked out. A reaction that I totally understand. Midsommar is disturbing in a way that not a lot of movies are, drawing its horror from the trauma of death and how we deal with it, but also the idea of the taboo, that what's acceptable and familiar in one culture might be considered violent and shocking in others. Midsommar using that tension to trap its characters in a nightmare, as a group of students travel deep into the heart of rural Sweden for the Midsommar Festival, an event that only occurs once every 90 years where the sun only sets for a few hours a day, with the horror of Midsommar taking place in the blistering daylight as the disturbing reality of what our protagonists have walked into gradually begins to dawn on us and them. I wouldn't have expected anything less from Adi Astar and his team, the same people that brought us Hereditary, but it's how different Midsommar is from that, and honestly any film that makes it what it is, and that is one of the most shocking and disturbing films of the decade. Stephen King began writing the short story 1408 as part of a writing exercise, never intending to draft anything beyond the first couple of pages. But then something happened. What he was writing frightened him. Not to be confused with the film adaptation of the same name, King's short story tells the tale of a hotel room haunted, not by ghosts or spirits, but by something we could never understand. The narrative is broken into two parts. The first seeing our protagonist, Mike Enslin, arriving at the Hotel Dolphin to stay at the supposedly haunted hotel room 1408. The first section of the story taking place in the office of the hotel manager as he pleads with Enslin not to stay in the room, warning him of the bizarre horrors the people have experienced there. People breaking down in fits of laughter and tears. People going blind and experiencing impossible, terrifying colors. People mutilating themselves, leaping off its 14-story balcony, or hanging themselves in its cramped closets. The second part of the story is told through an audio cassette tape recovered from Mike's tape recorder, recorded during Mike's stay in 1408. And I'm not going to tell you what's on the tape, but its contents have haunted me for a long time, going beyond the fear of ghosts and ghouls to something more primal and ancient. That there is a place beyond our perception, and waiting there are beings impossible and horrifying. You can find 1408 in Stephen King's short story collection, Everything's Eventual. So this last one is kind of a cheat, but I've been playing Silent Hill 2. I did an okay-ish video about this game many years ago, but returning to the town of Silent Hill now, what's incredible to me is how gorgeous and horrifying it still is. I've been playing the PC Enhanced Edition, a fan-modded version of the game that takes the broken PC port and restores it, letting it run at modern settings. And it is absolutely stunning to see this thing running on modern hardware. But more importantly, Silent Hill 2 is still a beautiful, chilling story about the personal hells we trap ourselves in, and still a startling example of both what horror and games are capable of. If you're interested in checking it out, I'll leave some links in the description, but I'm also going to be playing through the game's final hours on Twitch, Halloween night, 7 PM EST, so feel free to join me there. Friends, that's gonna do it. I want to thank you for joining me today, and I really hope you had a good time with this video. And hey, if you did and would like to help me make more like it, you can check out patreon.com/Super Eyepatch Wolf, where for $1 you can support this channel and join the ranks of these beautiful people right here. Or you can head on over to Fangamer and pick up the official Super Eyepatch Wolf t-shirt. I want to thank Poolyboy for letting me once again use his music for the transitions. Check out his SoundCloud, his songs are rad. Special shoutouts this week to Sizif, Boudszer, Jan Vanderker, Tristan Gallant, Rena, Claudia Jacob, and Patron Guy. As ever, you can find me over on the Let's Fight a Boss video game podcast or on Twitter @Eyepatchwolf. Friends, take care of yourselves, and I'll see you next time.